It may seem a slow and gentle affair, but there's urgency here. This sudden burst of spring growth, taking advantage of something all plants need to grow: light. Leaves have yet to appear on the trees, but when they do, they'll cut off the light to the woodland floor. So there's a race on. All the early spring flowers must grow before that light's blocked out, and to do that, some of them have a hidden store of energy that gives them a head start. The primroses are out already, with these wonderfully bashful sulphur yellow faces, and all around them the leaves of bluebells. In a couple of weeks' time, this is going to be a sea of blue. Of course, the bluebells have an advantage. They have one thing the gardener knows about at their roots: a bulb, a winter storehouse of food that, come the milder temperatures of spring, pushes them into life. And one of the first bulbs to emerge is the daffodil. It's a flower show more impressive than anything we can stage. Following daffodils are lesser celandines. Then come ramsons, the Old English name for wild garlic. Next up are wood anemones. And finally, bluebells. With maybe half the world's population in the United Kingdom, British woodland is the last stronghold of the native bluebell. But this spring race isn't confined to flowers on the forest floor. The growing leaves will not only cut out light, but also dampen sound. So the great spotted woodpecker stakes his claim to a territory before they appear, and risks a serious head injury for his trouble. Even with the canopy closed, the floor of most British woodlands still receives sufficient light for ferns and other undergrowth to grow. But the beechwood, like this one near Oxford, has virtually nothing growing on the forest floor. There's a very good reason for that, and it's right above my head. The beech leaves fit together so closely, almost like the pieces of a jigsaw, that very few chinks of light make it down to the forest floor, as a result of which the ground beneath my feet is almost completely devoid of life. But there is one survivor. This is the bird's nest orchid. Now, it might not look much, but there's a very good reason for that. It grows in the gloom, where nothing else can, and that means it can't manufacture food with the aid of sunlight and photosynthesize. That's why it's this kind of buffy cream colour, and its leaves have been reduced to these scales. But if it can't manufacture food with the aid of sunlight, then it has to find alternative means of nourishment. The orchid thrives with the help of a fungus that lives in the soil and breaks down rotting vegetation. The nutrients it absorbs are hijacked by the orchid. But the orchid gives nothing in return. It's a parasite. So by taking advantage of the fungi, these delicate flowers are able to survive in the dark underworld of the beech forest, where less well-adapted species simply fade away. With so little light, and therefore warmth, getting through the canopy, flying insects like butterflies tend to make for the woodland edge. It's where they'll find the later flowers and the instant energy their nectar provides. But in a wood in Hampshire, there's a butterfly that's turned its back on all that, and it's one creature I'd especially like to meet. But to see it, I need to get up there. Apparently this is their favourite perch, and they generally turn up about noon. Near enough. OK, do you want to turn her off? Thanks. That's a leaf. And here it is, a purple emperor butterfly. Foxy and creamy on the underside of the wings, and iridescent purple on top. Absolutely beautiful. To breed in our woodlands each year. The woods and forests we've visited so far have broadleaf trees that thrive in the relatively mild conditions that persist almost all the year round in much of England and Wales. But north of the border, things are very different. In the more remote parts of Scotland, trees must cope with probably the most unforgiving climate in the entire country. The Great Caledonian Forest once covered much of the Scottish Highlands, but due to a change in our climate and the felling of its trees, the forest today is a shadow of its former self. The trees are pines, birch, aspen, rowan and junipers, and they're beautifully adapted to the harsh conditions that prevail in the north. This land can be covered in snow for up to 100 days of the year, but the conical shape of many trees ensures the snow slides off their branches, so they don't break. The sap contains antifreeze, so the water inside the tree doesn't turn into ice. And of all the Caledonian trees, the toughest must be the magnificent Scots pine. It's the world's most widespread conifer, and there's one important adaptation that enables it to grow in the most unexpected places. The rock face below me is exposed to all the elements: wind, rain, snow and ice, but amazingly, some trees manage to grow even here. Against all the odds, this pine tree here has managed to establish itself on this sheer rock face. There's hardly any soil here, and consequently hardly any moisture, and what there is freezes in winter. Temperatures here can fall to -20 degrees, and winds can reach speeds of up to 140 miles an hour. So how does it survive? By using these pine needles. They are leaves, but they're very, very narrow,
and they're covered in a waxy coating which hangs on to as much moisture as possible. So while deciduous trees shed their leaves in autumn and grow new ones each spring, the pine hangs onto its leaves all the year round, saving itself the energy.
And up among its branches it also has pine cones growing throughout the year.